Rec-
Namaste, everyone. A very warm welcome to you all to today's guest talk titled Decluttering, the Art of Knowing What to Keep. Our guest speaker today is Richa Sharma. I would like to share a quick introduction for her. Richa is a mental health professional with decade-long experience working with adolescents and young adults. She is also a professional musician and has collaborated with renowned global artists. She presently leads a band named Muktiverse. Richa loves reading books on wisdom and spirituality. Welcome, Richa. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to hearing you on this very interesting topic.
Thank you, Arunima, for this beautiful introduction. And once again, thanks the Yes team and family for giving me this wonderful topic to start with. Um, Before I begin, I just want to add a disclaimer that by decluttering, it doesn't mean that I'm going to teach you that this is an apt way to fold your clothes and stack inside your almirahs, or this is how you should be keeping your stuff. That's not what that is also an aspect, important aspect of decluttering and controlling the clutter around us, but that's just one small part of it. So in today's session, the intention is to share the psychology behind why do we accumulate clutter over the years. Okay, what prompts us to hold on to certain things. Okay, and I have been very fascinated by this topic for over 10 years, and I've been working on this in my own personal life, in my home, in my surrounding. And I have found that clutter does not only mean material or tangible or physical clutter that we see in front of our eyes. But normally by clutter, this is what comes to our mind, the physical accumulation of stuff around us. Okay. But as we move ahead in the presentation, I would love to share with you the various types of clutter that I feel we accumulate in various realms of our life, different layers of clutter that we accumulate or tend to hoard. Okay, so let's get started. I welcome all of you with a warm good evening and a warm namaskar. And I'm really happy to see all of you here today and to share what I have to share with you on this topic. Arunima, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing that I'd love you to do is a quick reflection. If you have a notepad, you can jot these thoughts down. If you'd like to add on your chat on the chat box, you can do that. If you'd like to unmute yourself and share, you can do that, or you can simply reflect for yourself. So the first thing right now is, take a quick look in your room and see what are the three things that you can remove from your room. Three things that are not required and yet they are here right now in your room. We'll just take a quick 1 minute to reflect on these. The second one is what are the items inside my drawer? What are the items that you are able to see inside your drawer? And the third one is on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does home feel like home to you? Where 10 means home feels a lot like home. And by that, I would mean, not just the feeling of a roof on your head, but the kind of space that you feel, the kind of energy that your home is giving you right now. How much does that make you feel? So if you can enter some of the, Shraddha feels 10 on 10 in her space right now, okay, which is great, which is good. So 10 means you feel best in your home right now. But I would love to share a small confession that I grew up in a joint family for the first initial years of my life, and where, drawers would be stuffed like anything. There'd be so much of things piled up in a drawer, and to look for something, you would not know that this particular thing is kept over here. So when the need arose to look for something, you just open up any random drawers, and you'd see the elderly in your home also do the same, and they just keep on throwing stuffs away until you find that one small object that you required at that time. And I felt, honestly, I found that this is very normal. There's nothing wrong, and this is how we should be leading our lives, and this is how it's absolutely normal, okay. And as I grew up, I went to a boarding school where you found different friends, and we had to fold our own, take care of our belongings, look at our own laundry, clean our drawer. The wardens would come and check all of that, and gradually you learn and unlearn some patterns that are not as healthy or as great. Okay, so what I want to add here before I begin delving into this topic is that each one of us has a very subjective and different relationship to clutter, and what for someone might be a memorabilia, for someone it might be a very um, s- intangible part of another person that they love. It's a special gift for someone. For another person, that might be just a useless piece of clutter. So clutter could be very personal, and while there could be some common aspects, as if, not throwing garbage on the floor, or not throwing random newspapers, not sharpening pencil and putting it on the floor like that, all of these we all might agree. But all of us will have personal attitude towards what I'd like to put on my bedside, and all of those. So we'll learn more about these as we proceed. Okay. So let us get started. I hope you enjoyed doing these reflections, and let me know if you can access my screen and that it looks full, because I'm not able to understand. Yeah, I hope this is okay.
Yeah.
Fine. So what are we going to learn today? It's like I've just summarized what are we going to look forward to in today's session. The first thing is, what is decluttering? And my favorite here, why do we accumulate clutter in the first place? The different types of clutter. How does clutter affect us? We did a part of this in the previous session last month, but we'll go into more detail here. What are the benefits of decluttering? And I'm going to share one philosophical approach, and an attitude that's a favorite of mine, with respect to decluttering. And towards the end, we'll learn certain ways on how to declutter, and how to identify or understand what are the things that we need to keep, and how do we keep those things. So I hope that in this time frame we are able to cover all of these. Okay, so the first thing is, what is decluttering? There are lots of standard definitions, and lots of common themes that I came across, and I put all of those together to create a more comprehensive definition of decluttering. It's a practice of removing unnecessary items that we do not need from a cluttered, overcrowded space, okay, to make it more pleasant and useful. So this deals with the more material form of clutter, okay. Also, it's a practice to organize and prioritize our calendar, our commitments, our schedule, and any kind of possessions, okay. And finally, it's an understanding of being aware, of knowing, what are the things we need to keep, and what are the things we do not need to hold on to as fast, or um, as compulsively as we are holding at the moment. And like I already mentioned, all of us have a very different idea about what is clutter for us. Okay, so if there is a huge space, and then there are certain, objects and imagery or photographs or paintings, and that looks aesthetic, and probably that's a purpose. For instance, a library. The library is a place to keep books, and if it's alphabetically arranged, it's easier for the user to identify and take that material. So I'm not talking about those kind of collections. But if it's just one small room and you look at a pile of books all over there with dust and not maintained, that would form a kind of clutter, right? So now this is my favorite. And after this, I'll come back into the session and I would love to hear your thoughts with respect to this. So, the first thing, why do we accumulate clutter? Okay. Like I already mentioned, the first one is past experiences, our childhood experiences, what we saw our elderly at home do. That forms an attitude in us that this is an apt behavior, form of behavior. Okay. And that becomes a normal or default for us, like it was for me for a couple of years. Another thing, it's also a matter of priority. I mean, probably if there's a pile of clothes lying around in my room, probably it's not that much of a priority for me at the moment, and I might be focused on doing some more important things that I deem more valuable or important for me at the. For instance, if a student has an exam next day and a lot of books piling up or files and papers, etc., so it's not a priority for them to keep all of those clean and neatly arranged. At that moment, it's their priority to revise for the exam the next day. Okay, so it could be very momentary. um, Also a lack of time, right? And the fourth one is this is a very, very important, and a lot of us resonate with this, a sentimental value, and we feel guilty if we have to let go of that material. We feel, this person had given this to me with so much of love. If they come to know that I'm not keeping this with me any longer, how bad will they feel? Okay. Also, a lot of us have, and all of us have this tendency to some extent. We have difficulty letting go, releasing, and we have, we keep clinging or holding on to, or we have a lot of attachment towards certain objects or behavior patterns or thoughts. In Hindi we call it pakad. We're just holding on to something, we're not letting that go. Also, if we are in a home, the next 2 points relate to that. If you're in a home or in an office or in a setting where other people are involved, so other people might not share exactly the same enthusiasm or intention like us. For instance, if I love to stay very neat and clean, but other members in my family, my child might not feel that way. She would love to throw toys and scattered pieces of paper here and there. So that discrepancy might tend to accumulate clutter in the home, and there's only one person cleaning all the time. So one might feel, why should I be the one to do this all the time? Okay. Also, social loafing. Some of you might be familiar with this term, but this might be a new concept for a lot of you. So social loafing is a term in social psychology where if in a group all of us are sitting together and there is one particular task or a project that we are working on, then there's a diffusion of responsibility, then none of us feels strongly accountable for that alone by ourselves. So what I'll feel, I'm not the only one doing this. Arunima should also take care of this. Nawaz should also take care. Kalyani should also be doing some part, right? So if everybody in the room is thinking like that, then the work doesn't get done. And this sometimes happens in the home. If there's a washroom and a lot of toothbrushes, everybody might feel, why should I be keeping this? Okay. Also, since childhood or at early ages, a lot of us might have been overstuffed with a lot of gifts, and we might have felt that receiving tangible gifts, tangible forms of objects is a symbol of love. So we keep on accumulating a lot of material or stuff, and that becomes our language of love, and we understand that until somebody doesn't give us something, they do not love us. Okay. Also believing that more stuff equates more greater success or more fun, which is a consumer psychology, and the consumer market benefits from us feeling this way, right? Also FOMO and comparison, all of us know, and FOMO means, it's a new age lingo which means fear of missing out. So for instance, Arunima, you got a new refrigerator in your home, for instance, and I might start feeling, oh my God, you got this latest model, I should also have it. So I might have my own model here at my space, but now I'm no longer happy with that. I'm feeling that I'm missing out on something that you have. Okay. And a lack of control um, on various aspects of our life, our schedule, our timetable, our routine, or the things that we do, the things that we are prioritizing at the moment. It just puts us in a lot of overwhelm. So clutter is a symptom of not making decisions in our life, not being able to make the right decision, that this is something I need to really focus at or pay attention at. Am I making sense so far? Are you able to relate? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Richa.
So
Yeah.
are there concepts? Are there any words or concepts that I did not clarify enough? FOMO, I think it's understood. Social loafing, it's understood. Diffusion of responsibility. Why should I be the one to do all of it? Shraddha should also do this. Dr. Sangeeta should also do this. Mithu ma'am sings so beautifully. She should also be doing some part, right? So social loafing is that, not taking entire accountability on our own. Okay, let's move ahead. So these are certain reasons of why we accumulate clutter, right? Now, I'm sorry. I think I yeah. Now this is my favorite, and this was one reason why I was so enthusiastic to share this topic with all of you, and that is to share with you that clutter is not just the first type that we normally know, and it's also a lot more than that. So the first type, as all of us understand, but let us try to look into our homes and let's just try to relate that how much of it do we have, and is it decent or is it overwhelming? We can all do this personal reflection for ourselves. So the first one is physical items in our surroundings. And by our surroundings, I mean our home or office or space of work, or our car, or any physical space that we have, warehouse, whatever. Okay. So the first, kitchen appliances, electronic gadgets, cosmetic products, jewelry, shoes, clothes, books, office stationery, gears, etc. Okay. And now let me tell you, I'm a big fan of stationery. I love reading a lot. Okay. And there has been a time I like the greatest amount of money that I've been spending is not on jewelry or clothing, but on books actually. So and I have a huge pile of diaries and journals, and everybody in my home, my brother, my parents, they make fun of me. They'd say, you just open one page of diary, you'll write something on it and leave it aside, and you'll use another piece of diary to write another theme or topic. And I do that. Okay, like I like to organize my thoughts in different forms of diary, and they might not understand, but I have had this fascination for all these years. One separate piece for music, something separate for positive psychology and spirituality and all of that. And it took me a while to realize that I might not need to accumulate so much, because when I move stuff from one place to another, when we shift, it really gets very overwhelming. So then I have to make a choice. Do I really need to carry this or not? It's so heavy, so bulky, it takes so much of space and time and all. Um, so with respect to books, I had a very hard time letting go of books, because I always used to feel, these are my identity, and I have read these books and I need to keep them to myself, and I have read it and I have the knowledge that those books have offered. But I love probably also using that as a showpiece. My students might come home and they might see, wow, this is so intellectual of Richa ma'am, and very artistic, very aesthetic arrangement of books in my wardrobe, etc. So of late, in the past 2 years, I have really started working in this area and understood that it's not all the books that I accumulate inside my home that matters, but the wisdom that I grasp. And I have, for the past 2 years, I've really understood that attending yes courses and listening to Dr. Bijlani is a great deal of amazing building knowledge resource than reading so many books by ourselves, because I think Bijlani sir completely teaches in such a very lucid and juicy manner. I really started enjoying that. And that's why I started letting go of certain books that I had. Okay. So moving ahead, we spoke about the physical form of clutter, but that's not all that we have. We have a lot of different forms of clutter as well. We have a lot of emotional baggage that we carry within ourselves, which comes in the form of expectations from people, which is usually very unrealistic expectations of other people, a lot of past regrets, compulsions, and obsessions. Okay, so compulsions means, certain kind of oughts, that this is how it has to be. This is how this person should be talking to me or behaving with me or acting with me. And certain obsessions around various relationships or interpersonal connects. And you might have come across your own self and other people who handle a certain situation in a my way or the highway kind of a, so if you don't do this, then just forget about it. So that's a very toxic kind of an attitude that a lot of us hold. Okay. Also, the more cognitive kind of baggage that we carry, okay, apart from the emotional one, those are mental patterns. Those are irrational beliefs, irrational ideations, unrealistic, illogical ideations of ourselves and the world. For instance, the whole world is obliged, to serve me. And I think a lot of us feel that kind of entitlement. So that's a very toxic, very irrational ideation we all feel from the world. Shoulds, oughts, and musts, excessive attachment and obsession, also about beliefs that we hold. And a lot of prejudices or stereotypes that we hold. This Without making it sound controversial, a lot of political, religious, ethnic identity beliefs that we hold about our own selves, the ethnocentric aspects, and about other people, the judgment aspects that we hold about other people. Also, a lot of behavioral baggage that we cling onto certain people who do not actually reciprocate that. And we tend to be very over possessive in our relationships. We would love to hold a lot of control over other people. I would like to remind you all of a beautiful poetry by Khalil Gibran that says, your children are not your children, they are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. And yet parents have a very strong sense of hold and control over children, which is important to some extent for the children's safety. But a lot of time it goes beyond that decent extent. Okay, a lot of demand and authority over others, which include our children, parents, partners, families, and imposing our own beliefs on other people. That's a behavioral baggage or clutter that we tend to have around us. And this is new, but this is very important. This is digital clutter. What kind of footprint am I leaving in the digital space? What are the kind of comments that I write on my social media? Who are the people that I follow? How does my computer look like? What are my WhatsApp chats like? How many photos do I have on my gallery? What are the kind of stuffs or digital images, digital things that I'm saving or storing? So all of that also, we all tend to accumulate. So that is also a form of clutter. And if we can manage it well, periodically revisit that, it um, that's a very healthy thing to do. But if not, it can get really overwhelming. You do not sometimes find the object or the file that you were actually looking for, that you had started to search for. Okay, are you able to see the screen, Arunima? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So now here, let's talk about some effects of clutter. What does clutter create in us? You remember the last session, we spoke about different forms of hormones. Um, and you remember the cortisol, that's the stress hormone. So clutter actually leads to a lot of chaos. Imagine so much of stuff around yourself that you can't even move. That's very chaotic. And it actually activates cortisol inside us, which is a stress hormone. And it makes us feel very irritable, and we're not able to respond to more important or immediate demands in a decent manner, or in the way that we could respond to our best. Okay. So clutter makes us feel very, very, very overwhelmed. It makes us feel suffocated and also distracted. It takes away our attention, energy, and time from the important thing to the more unproductive aspects. Clutter definitely reduces our productivity. It makes us procrastinate. It makes us lose our flow and focus. And of course, we're not able to find our items that we need, which is so much a wastage of our time, right? We have difficulty slowing down if we have a lot of clutter, which is ironical. But having so much of activation and stimulation in the form of clutter and the irritability that it causes, it's difficult to calm down and slow down. Okay, so clutter also slows down our cognitive functioning, our decision making, our ability to think rationally, our ability to process information in a logical manner, and in turn, reducing our sense of well being and impacting our mental health in a negative manner. I'm not saying this. There are research findings, and I've listed those. Some of them are from NCBI and Springer, and you can go through those in the link here. And just imagine, we spend the first half of our lives accumulating stuff, and then we spend the second half of our life getting rid of a lot of stuff, right? And that's really ironical. The initial years of our life, we believe that this is so important. It's important to build a home. It's important to have that gadget to ourselves, and it's perfectly fine to have some of those aspirations and dreams. um but towards the later phase of our life, probably I'm in my mid 30s right now, and I do realize, I do keep revisiting my priorities, and I feel, what is it that is really worthwhile? What is it that is really important? And I learned something very valuable, which is, make a list of 10 things that you would really want to do in your life. Kind of make a list of 10 goals that you like to achieve or focus on. And it happens like हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, and we have so many desires and aspirations. We want to do this as well. We want to do, I have been that kind of a person as well. And so of those 10, strike off 7 and keep only the 3 goals that you cannot live without. So the idea is, of that 10, actually the 3 most valuable or important goals would be the ones that are truly meaningful, or that give you a sense of purpose. And the others might be either a subset of those 3 goals. They might be related to that. So when you work towards pursuing those 3 important goals, you might be able to accomplish the others as well, or those are worth discarding. Okay, so it's an amazing thought to identify 3 most important goals in our life, and to build our life in that direction, which works in the completion of those 3 goals. So in the form, minimizing the distractions and minimizing going here and there. I want to publish a book as well. I want to do this as well. I want to do that as well, which is wonderful. But for a time being, let us focus on few smaller pieces of goals, and let's work on those. And once that is accomplished, then you can move on to the subsequent another goal, right? So let's move ahead and see what we have next. So these were the various types of clutter and the effect of clutter. Now, what are the benefits of decluttering? As you can see, this is, I think, probably the most simple slide, and there's such less material. But the benefit is far-reaching. It reduces overwhelm. It improves our overall sense of well-being. It leaves more space and room for clarity, and releases time to pursue more meaningful thing, which is actually something that all of us are, seeking for. Why are we working? We're working to, save or invest our money. And what do we want to do eventually? We want to retire early to pursue some more meaningful goals or desires or aspects or aspirations, right? All of us want to enjoy life, or we want to enjoy life post retirement. And I'm not judging the philosophy around that, because it's very personal and subjective for each one of us. But if we have so much of stuff scattered here that takes so much of time to clean up, or to pick up the things that we really need, it that particular time could have been used to pursue some of those aspirations or goals that we are looking forward to pursuing post our retirement or post, once we start getting free. So so the lesser clutter, the more time you have, the less overwhelm you have, and that time you can put into more productive. Or by productive, I don't mean you just have to keep doing something to feel productive. You could take a nap, you could take a rest, you could just slow down and enjoy that piece of music, which would be a very productive thing to do. You could watch or listen to an amazing lecture or read a book. Okay, anything that you desire. Yes, so now this is the most favorite part of philosophy that I was wanting to share. And there are some more other thoughts around this which I'll talk about. But this philosophy comes from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and all of those of you who've attended the Yas 1 course, the Raj Yoga, you might be aware of sharing these, the yam and the niyams in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So the aparigrah is a concept which says that nothing belongs to us actually. So not holding on to something, not possessing something, not greeding or wanting to hold on to a lot of material. Okay. And the understanding that holding on to material can be hurtful and letting go can be more liberating. I've added this metaphor from my end. Just imagine a bird who is flying in the sky, but the bird has a stone attached to its feet. So the bird is not able to fly or soar higher. But if that stone is let go of the bird is able to soar, right? Or if you're traveling, if you're hiking or mountaineering, then it's more intelligent to go with a bag that only has the essentials and not with a lot of stuff, right? That we do not need or that we are keeping just for luxury, right? You agree? Does that resonate with you? Yeah, it does. Okay. So, so aparigraha is one of that philosophy that, can give us an understanding around clutter. But there are a lot more. Aste is another one, non-stealing, stealing of other people's time or um, materials or plagiarism and things like that. Also, tapas. So, these are some Patanjali's Yoga Sutras have some amazing wisdom that if you've not yet checked, I strongly recommend you to go back to the Yes 01 course. Arunima, please share the link of the playlist here. And please listen. Actually, Bijlani sir explains that much more beautifully than I'm talking about here right now. So please do check out this concept of aparigrah, and you will have a better understanding of how to let go of, clutter and material and things that you aspire for, but that do not serve a greater good to you. Okay, now let's come to the very important part here: how to declutter. So how do I go about decluttering? Okay, so the first thing to do is setting an intention, and let that intention be more verbal, and let it be in a form of acknowledgement. So for instance, I moved into a new place, and I actually carried lesser clutter in this space. But yet, the daily piled up laundry and child's toys and all of that, they definitely keep coming up. So I might set a particular time of the day and set an intention. I am doing this um, with an intention of keeping all the clothes inside the cupboard in a more organized manner, and I could dedicate an hour to do that. Okay, and I could make it more enjoyable. So I could play a favorite piece of music. I love playing kirtans or chants like that, or sometimes, depending on the mood, I would love to play a lo-fi or EDM music. My current favorite is playing the Yes talks from the playlist. So listening to Bishlani sir and doing some of those tasks. It's multitasking and I should not be doing that, but it really helps me a lot. Okay, so acknowledging and setting an intention. The other important thing is to start small and start slow. So do not overwhelm yourself ki, aaj hi mujhe sab kar dena hai. That way tomorrow you won't have energy left to complete the other work. It's going to be very overwhelming. So start small, but be very consistent. Okay. And another thing is, take a look at your calendar and look at the schedule you have in your day. So often we are too busy being busy, and we glorify being busy, the hustle culture. Okay, so let's just revisit our calendar and see if this is really nourishing me. Does it really look good to me? Do I find it healthy? Okay, and try to reduce commitments. Of course, the obligations that we have to do every day, they are mandatory, but the other things that we take in where we're not able to say no, let's try to reduce those if possible. Also, revisit items or physical possessions that we have, and look at them if they hold sentimental value or joy or any kind of tangible or economic value in our lives. And as for sentimental value, I'd like to say that the person who had gifted that object to you gave it with an intention to make you feel happy. And if letting it go makes you feel more happy, then that person would not be actually sad that you're not keeping it with you. Okay, so sentimental items might have some value, but if they are those are more physical items, and they might be by some really very special people, you might think about archiving them in some different form, like probably moving to the digital form and archiving or saving those. Also try to batch tasks that can be clubbed together. I do not mean multitasking is good, um, because it's not great all the times, but certain tasks, for laundry for instance, so you do not have to do laundry every day, but you can have a dedicated time to doing it, adding more clothes together and washing all of them at one time. At the same time, probably dishwashing as well, because the machine is doing its task, and you can at the same time be there, monitor the laundry, and do another task at the same time. Also, this is very important, practicing forgiveness and releasing past resentment. And I'd like to come back here in the session to share this with you. A lot of us hold a lot of resentment and anger against people that we love, probably our parents, our best friends, someone we have been in a relationship with for not doing something that we expected them to do, and we keep that resentment inside of us, probably also towards a loved one who has left us, who is not there in this world anymore. So and holding on to that resentment can be very painful, and I have worked in this aspect with some of my clients, and I have experienced that releasing that resentment is very, very important for us to let go of that emotional baggage that we hold towards that person. So it's in this short span of time, it's not easy for me to tell in detail how to go about it, but we can have one session dedicated to forgiveness exclusively and work more in this area. But here I'd just like to say that probably you can write down, the names of people, my dad, my mom, my friends, other relatives, people for acting nonsense with us, for doing things that they did not realize harmed us, for bullying, teachers, and for ourselves also. So make a list of each of these persons and make columns, and do it in a writing format. Okay, and mention the acts that you are angry with that person for. And there could be several of that. The whole book page can be filled, there could be so many acts. So add those points and pick up just one. So for instance, if I want to release my resentment against my dad, this is hypothetical. I love my father. um so just pick up that one instance and sit down calmly and take a few deep breaths and just hold your heart and just say, I forgive, and specify that person. So I forgive my father for not being there with me when I needed that person, for traveling so much, for touring so much for work and not being there. So those could be specific examples, and pick up one example at one time and work through that and repeat it. And it might not come easy for you, and keep repeating it until you feel slightly lighter inside your heart. And there are other 2 3 techniques that I mentioned here in the slide show, and I'll encourage you to take a screenshot when I present my screen once again. The other technique is called a form of catharsis, which allows us to release pent up emotions. And that can be done, this might sound very funny, but this can be done by pummeling a pillow. So there are a lot of people who might have bullied us or who might have hurt us, and this might look insane, So please close your doors and do it when nobody else is watching you, and take a pillow, keep a dedicated time for this, and punch it, actually, literally thinking that it is that person. Because you can't punch that person in real, right? You will be punched back by them. So, so anything that you wanted to say to this person, say it over here. The idea here is to release what you have inside yourself in a safe setting. If you have a therapist or a counselor, if you have access to that, that's wonderful. But if not, this is a safe technique to try. And some of my colleagues who've tried this shared that it works for them. It makes them feel lighter and less burdened. Okay, so these were three techniques that I wanted to share with you. Another one, there's a term written here as REBT, which we should have another dedicated session to talk on. But you can take a screenshot of all these points. But this is a rational emotive behavior therapy, and it talks about turning our irrational beliefs into more rational versions, So, for instance, if I think, why is Nawaz not talking to me? Then turning it to, nobody is obliged to keep talking to me all the time. So that kind of converting our irrational beliefs or expectations to a more empathetic and more logical kind of a belief. Okay. But this takes a lot of time to work on. Okay. Then consuming the content that we are consuming in a more conscious manner, for especially news, limiting the intake of news, storing our objects in the season wise, food, grains, also clothes inside our wardrobe. So what we do not need, let's store those elsewhere, okay, so that they do not occupy so much of space. Also, I think this really works wonderfully, donating what we're not using. And the idea is, look at the items that you've not used for 1 year. If you've not used it for 1 year, what are you hoping for? Okay, so chances are you might not use that. Okay, or probably waiting to lose weight, then you'll be able to fit into that dress. When you will lose that weight, you might be able to buy another piece of dress. So it's best to donate what you're not using. Also, keep a tab or check on new stuffs. Okay, and do not give into the temptations of housing loans and EMIs and bank loans, etc., which is again very subjective. But use your judgment. Do not allow others to fill you with what you need. Rather, go by your own intuition, and don't buy anything that you cannot afford. Don't buy things on credit. Okay. Also, removing unnecessary social media. I did this. I mean, I removed unnecessary social media from my phone, and I have only the things that I need. And I also use a lot of downtime on my phone, in that, it keeps a tab on the time I'm spending on my gadgets. Okay. And if you are on social media, try to follow positive influences, try to follow positive hashtags. And I strongly recommend all those who are new here to please go to YouTube channel and follow the YouTube channel. You have beautiful content over there to follow and listen. Periodically revisit your photo gallery as well, and delete extra pictures, delete extra screenshots that we do not need. This is a piece of humor as we end the session. Before buying a product, reflect on the following. You can take a screenshot of this. Why do I need to buy this product? Is it impulsive? Am I buying it just to show off my status or fit in? Okay. Am I going to enjoy it few years down the line? And look here, this piece of humor is now, for the latest piece of phone, I'm not naming the model, but for the latest piece of phone, there's another payment option apart from MasterCard and Visa, and that is the kidney. Okay, a lot of people do that, right? And as I end, let's think of the footprint that we create by sometimes going and seeing the landfill and realizing that the landfill is not carrying stuffs that only other people are using. It's by us. We are the people who are causing all of that accumulation of clutter, right? So all the things that we are doing every day, all the material that we are using every day, is leading to that pile up of landfill. Okay, so anything that we buy henceforth, let us be more mindful and intentional, and look at its long term use, um, And sometimes you can go for that occasional cup of coffee with your friends. That's perfectly fine. That's okay. Going for hedonistic pleasure sometimes is okay, but not making it as a prime motive of our life. Thinking more long term and considering the impact of anything that we are consuming or accumulating. Okay. So actually, there's a lot to share and talk in this regard, but I've tried to make it as quick and as short as possible here. And Arunima, it's 6:45, so I would like to wrap the session out here. But we can build on some of these points, and if you have specific questions, please feel free to ask those. Over to you, Arunima. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richa. Very interesting talk, and I'm sure very helpful to all of us in some way or the other. Participants, if anyone of you has a question, please go ahead. Please raise the hand, or you can put the question in the chat box.
Hello.
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
We have a sense of feeling of anxiety when the things we need are not in my vision. So that means what I need, I want to have it in my view. Otherwise, I feel little worried. What do you feel about it?
Okay, what kind of things? Like if it is your spectacles that you cannot see without, it's very natural to feel anxious if that is not in sight. But or probably keys, to your home. But
Yeah, there are a lot of things that I use daily. A
what
particular
kind?
book that I am reading,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
my diary piece, if it is
Mm-hmm.
not certainly visible, my pen or pencil not
Mm-hmm.
available right now.
Mm-hmm.
When I need it, I
Mm-hmm.
feel anxious suddenly. Where it is gone?
Uh-huh. Okay, okay. I understand you. This is a very valid point, and it's very natural to feel anxious, but that feeling of anxiety does not help, right? I mean, that does not help you find the object as well. If you could know that there is one dedicated place where I keep it all the time, that will help you identify that object or have it whenever you need it. Which is why I mentioned it in the last session also. Have everything you own in your home a place to belong. Okay, so in fact, like the first question that I asked, do you know what is inside your drawer? So if if you should be aware that this is the place dedicated for this particular purpose. So if you have closet, we have a lot of space in homes inside the closets. So there could be one space dedicated for medicines and all of that. One space could be for spectacles and books and the book that you're reading, sir. So wherever you're sitting, you could just keep it by your side. Um, you know, and when you get up, pick it up with you and do not leave it outside, elsewhere. Just pick it up with you and put it back into the cupboard or beside your bed so that you can find it again. Okay. And with respect to anxiety, I would say you could try some more grounding technique. Like I had shared one in the last session. So you could take a few deep breaths and just be more mindful of your present situation. I shared a 5 4 3 2 1 technique in the last session. You were there in the last session as well, so you remember. So just slowing down a bit and acknowledging that that object has not gone out of your home. Nobody has stolen it and taken it with them. It's very much inside the home. It won't go anywhere. So just slowing down and trying to find out, you will be able to find that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking this question. Yeah.
Uh, Anyone else has got a question? Please go ahead.
You could share your experiences or reflections or anything more to add over here as well. Don't have to be a question necessarily.
Hi, Richa. I'd like to add something.
Yes, ma'am, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I completely understand and I agree with what you said about decluttering. However, there is another aspect which I think is very valuable, is pieces and objects that come from our ancestors that have not, it's not just sentimental value, it's more than that. It's things, embroideries, artisanal things which don't exist anymore. So even though, because I have so many pieces like this, and they're for my collection. And the same thing actually I feel about my music. There's like so many bands that don't exist anymore, but I've still got access to that music. And it also creates a lot of my books and my music and my things actually create my life history. They represent where I've traveled, what I've experienced. And if anybody was to open that, they would actually get a real beautiful thing of my life history. So there's that element, which, it kind of doesn't quite fit with decluttering, but I agree with most of what you said. And I'd also like to say something else. I love, I really enjoyed experiencing who you are and just your sharing of yourself in this session. So thank you for that.
Thank you, ma'am. And in fact, I was expecting somebody to share this aspect, the ancestral lineage or the legacy that we carry, and it's very important. And I think material or goods, some of those more tangible aspects are, like if my mom shares with me something that her grandmother had shared or given to her, that's a special piece of memory. So the idea behind decluttering is not just to consider every material that we have as a piece of trash and to discard all of that away, because that would be unfair. But the idea that whatever you have, you feel a greater sense of joy with that, and which is there in your case. So when you talk about embroidery, in fact, even I felt so beautiful hearing about that.
Mm.
Right, the embroidery that you carry from generations. Okay. And it's passing on of certain pieces of heritage from one generation to the other. That is a very precious resource. So by decluttering, we do not mean discarding all of that and to embrace nothing, and but of course passing that on to the right person who can treat it in a gentle and nice manner, and treat it with a lot of respect, as well as having a better relationship with the objects that we own. I think by decluttering, this is what you'd mean, right? But I'm very happy to hear your story, and it really felt beautiful. Thank you so much. I'd love to hear your collection of music some time and know more about
Thanks.
that. Yeah. Okay.
I have a comment here. Hi, Richa. This is Suni.
Hi, ma'am. Yeah.
Something to what I think Dr. Sangeeta was sharing. So there is a woman called Marie Kondo who came out with this concept. I'm sure you know about it, but just maybe for the larger group. So there's this Con Marie method of tidying up. She's a Japanese author, and she just speaks about, so this. I mean, I read her book and that helped me a lot because I was also like this collector of collector come hoarder, I would say, because just collected so much over the years. And then but she has this very precise method of you pick up each thing and then you look at it and you spend time with it, and then you say, does it bring joy to me? It's exactly, does it give me any sense of happiness? And if it doesn't, and maybe even if it does, but maybe it also brings some sorrow or catharsis or whatever, then you actually say goodbye to it. So it's like this relationship you have with each of your items. And some of us who are, I would say, collectors or hoarders, then I mean, there is a lot of music out there, but maybe there is some music which I don't relate to anymore. So that music at least I've said goodbye to, and maybe there are books and all that, so I can really relate to what Dr. Sangeeta was talking about. But so that has helped. But yeah, having said all of that, I still want to declutter more. Yes, it's always, especially when you have children at home, I think it's an ongoing thing. Yes. And thank
Right.
you for sharing all that you did. It was really
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I've heard about Marie Kondo and the KonMari method as well. And with respect to music or items that we do not need or that we are done with, I'm sure there is somebody else who needs it more than us. It's a great idea to give it away or to pass it on to people, you know. Same for objects, you know, the joy that you might feel by giving something to another person who is using it and taking so much of benefit. That's a stronger sense of eudaimonic joy, you know. That's a greater sense of pleasure you get more than what you were experiencing when you were consuming that object, when somebody else is benefiting from it. So that's more selfless form of joy. So yeah, very relatable. Thank you for your share. Really lovely hearing you. Thank you.
Richa, can I also, I want to just bring up one other point, and that is that why are we so constantly focused on joy? I mean, there are incredibly intense and deep emotions that also are very motivating and inspiring and catalysts for change. But somehow we always, and of course, it's not a criticism, it's definitely not a bad thing. But I just see, I know that a lot of artists that I'm connected with, they say, well, there's a lot of depth and, you know, emotion and a lot of substance in things that may not seem so light, you know. So I just wanted to make a point about that.
Okay, yeah, I do. You make sense. And I would say this would take one full session to discuss, right? About various emotions outside of joy. And human beings probably tend to, you know, go for experiences that maximize pleasure and minimize pain. You know, human beings do have this tendency, which is also propagated by popular media and by tragedy and comedy and all of that, those forms of literature. So there's a lot more to delve into in regard of this, but of course there are lots of different forms of emotions. Even pain is necessary for us to be humble and grounded and be more grateful and all of that, and we need a mix of all those emotions. And I personally believe that God gives us exactly the kind of experience or emotion that we need at that point of life for the kind of evolution that we are meant for, right? So all forms of emotions and experiences are important for us, not just joy. Joy is just one small form of emotion. Okay. Arunima. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Um, Anyone else has a question, please go ahead. Otherwise, we would like to go to Dr. Ramesh Gujlani if he has any comments for us.
Yes, I'm a compulsive speaker, so always have something to say. Um, Let me first start with complimenting Richa. She has done it yet once again. Uh, she's repeated the experience we had in her previous Yes talk. And what comes through is her great sincerity, humility, and a sense of gratitude. Some of the qualities that are highly spiritual in nature. So, sort of her own attitude itself fits into our format of yoga education and spirituality. So instead of talking about spirituality, which also she did when she talked about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, etc., but more than that, she has illustrated it. Uh, she has been grateful to what she has learned from me, although I don't think that was all that indispensable, and she knew much of it already. And then, she has been very confessional. And the usual trend in this type of talks very often is that we all tend to do this, we all tend to do that. And the way it is conveyed, the tone says that we all do this and it is not right. And then what is not spoken, what is left unspoken is that the speaker says that we do this, uh, she takes it for granted that it's the others who do it, I am an exception. But that's not what she does. She's very confessional. She first talks about all the mistakes that she has made and how she has learned from them and continues to learn. And then she's very non judgmental. She doesn't judge those who are not doing the right things. And the way she has handled questions again shows how she has responded in a very positive, humble, and gentle way to every question. And of course, the questions are important, the comments are important, and they have added to the value of the session. But then she has handled it with, again, once again, great humility and gentleness. Now, now let me turn to the mother. She has said a few very interesting things. The first thing that she has said is regarding the disclaimer with which Richa started, that this session is not about how you organize the few things that you decide to keep. Now, even if you get rid of clutter, there are things that one still has, and those have to be well organized. And that again, as Rishikesh ji said, that you can't find what you want, and that may happen in spite of not having too much of clutter. And so what the mother says is that uh, the way you organize what you keep will have a certain logic behind it. And that logic is your personal logic. It's not anybody who can teach you. So in your own mind, you have created a certain logic which helps you organize. And since you have done it with that logic while you are organizing that material, you will be able to find it easily. So not only should each object have a place, and each object should be at the right place, within the objects, again, how you organize them is up to you, and there can be no hard and fast rule. For example, for books, you said that you can arrange them alphabetically in terms of the author within the same subject. Now, that is the way generally it is done in libraries. We may not be librarians, but all the same, we find that type of a thing useful. But then there can be exceptions, and that is in your own mind. For example, if I have a Gita by Sri Aurobindo and another Gita by Dr. Radhakrishnan and a third one from ISKCON, instead of listing them, keeping them at a place which is in terms of the alphabetical order, it's much easier for me to keep all the three Gitas at one place and just keep it under G. So G becomes the alphabet, letter of the alphabet, where I keep all the three. So, I mean, that is something personal. So you have a personal logic. And regarding Rishikesh's question that we can't find what we have, there are two things which occurred to me. One is, apart from, of course, keeping things at the right place all the time, sometimes, we are in a hurry or for some necessity, we keep it at the wrong place. But then we should do it consciously. So you're conscious that this is not the place for it, but right now I'm keeping it there because it's necessary. It will register. And then you'll be able to find it easily. The second thing is that there are certain items like, say, pens and pencils and so on. We can always have multiple copies of those, which means that you keep all the pens that you need at all the places where you're likely to need them. So then you'll not move the pen from one place to the other. It don't cost much. So just keep all the pens at every place where you are likely to need them. Then another thing which the mother has talked about is the relationship between physical clutter and mental clutter. A person's cupboard is generally a good reflection of the person's mind. If the person has a well-organized mind, the cupboard will also be well-organized. So the two are related. And both physical clutter and mental clutter can create stress. And the clutter may be benign, which means that the person knows, it may look like clutter to others, but the person knows where everything is. But then the clutter can be really malignant, where the person herself or himself doesn't know where a particular object is. Then coming to some clutter, which we keep because of sentimental value. Now, this is something nobody is really totally above. And some of the things are gifts which we have received. But then Richa has given us a good solution that it was given to make you happy. And if it is not making you happy, you don't have to keep it. And the best would be to pass it on to somebody who is likely to use it. So that gives us, in addition, the joy of giving. I'm sorry for using the word joy, but the fact is that all of us are looking for happiness. The only thing is the quality of that happiness keeps changing. It keeps getting more and more subtle as we evolve. But to reach that state where happiness and sorrow don't make any difference to us at all, to be in that state of steady peace is something which is more or less the ultimate stage in spiritual development. Till then, we can distinguish between joy and sorrow. The fluctuations may not be as marked as in an ordinary person, and the reasons for making us happy and unhappy may be different. The quality of the happiness may get more and more subtle, and we start describing it terms like joy and bliss and so on. We use different terms instead of just calling it happiness, but all the same, the joy of giving is a real joy, and if we can share it with somebody who will use it or use it better and more than, or who needs it more than we do, one can do that. Another type of things which we have sentimental attachment are family memorabilia. This includes our ancestors, and this also includes our children. For example, I had a few, two or three small plates, which my father brought when he migrated from Pakistan in 1947. So of that vintage. Now I know that I may be attached to them, but then it doesn't make any sense. So I pass them on to my granddaughters. That way they might last longer. And then I had memorabilia related to my daughter. And you can't imagine how much I stored those things. The copies that she used in the class 1, 2, and 3, the projects that she made then, and even a small little, those days we had for photography films. So in one of those, I used to keep certain small things in those boxes which you got from the film, and one of them had a few teeth that she had lost. Those were also preserved. Now, at a certain stage, when you feel that all this is of no use, can't keep it. So consult your daughter and with her together decide what all we can get rid of, and you'll find that generally the response is forthcoming, because she can also understand that now it doesn't make any sense to store that much stuff. But all the same, storing some such stuff is important, not only for sentimental reasons, but also many of those objects have a story behind them. And the child who learns that story learns about the family and the lineage in a much more pleasant and enjoyable way than otherwise. And there are studies which show that families which pass on such stories from one generation to the other are in general happier families. So it has a certain value, very intangible, can't easily explain it, but why those families where stories get passed on from generation to generation are happier families. And one way of doing it is to pass on some such objects and pass them on before one is dead and gone. Because I've seen those who leave behind a lot of stuff. I'm sure they also passed on quite a few things like that to the younger generation, but still they leave behind a lot. And after that, when their place is cleared up, the others do it so ruthlessly, they just throw everything away. Others are not bothered, those who are clearing up that space. So whether it is after death or whether it's after retirement, in both instances, I have seen after retirement, all the files, all the books that you stored and didn't want to take them along, but just left them that in case somebody else needs, maybe somebody else will use them, but nobody uses them, they're just thrown away by and large. Because they make sense only to the person who has left them behind. And that's why it's important. Then, coming to books, that is one attachment which we feel is quite justified, because books are a valuable possession. They indicate our joy for learning, and that is something which we like to keep. But at the same time, there may be many books which we have read, but probably will never reread. There are many books which we haven't yet read, but people at my age know that they may be excellent books, but I'll die without reading them. So keeping them only has sentimental value. And it has become even more important with the changing times, because you can find just about every good book on the internet, and you don't have to actually have a hard copy. Although hard copies which you have read sometimes can have a value because you have underlined certain things, you have made some notes, etc. But all the same, one has to sort of strike a compromise somewhere. The more the number of books one stores, the more difficult it will be to even find those which you really need. So that applies to clutter in general. Then coming to diaries. One thing which I found helpful is that when you start using a diary, leave the first few pages blank. And if the pages are not numbered, number them. And if it's a diary which is a New Year diary, then the dates serve as pagination. They provide the page numbers. So every time you start a new topic within the same diary, write down that this topic starts on 1st January, this topic starts on 31st March, and this topic starts on the 1st of June. And you have a table of contents in the front. And then at the back, the few pages that you have at the back, they start making an index which is alphabetical. And then you can have a variety of subjects, maybe interrelated subjects within the same diary, and you'll be able to find them easily. You'll not need that number of diaries. Now, these things are again becoming a little obsolete, because you can do all this on a computer. You can create folders, and within that you can have files, and you can organize them in the same way. They don't take any extra space at all. But then we also know that that has its limitations. Hard copies stay for decades and sometimes centuries, whereas computers The programs keep changing, they keep crashing. We all know we should have a backup. We don't have the time to keep a backup, and the result is that quite a bit that we might want to keep can get lost if it is stored just in the computer. Then coming to FOMO, in fact, companies deliberately capitalize on it. There's a term called planned obsolescence. When they come up with a new model, they've already planned how quickly it will get obsolete, what next they will come up with. So it's planned obsolescence, and that's how they tempt us. And some of it may be valuable, but a lot of it is useless. For example, imagine, remember those days when your computer had a monitor which looked like a small TV, and the rest of the stuff was also very bulky. Then came sleek monitors, then came desktops, sorry, the laptops, and up to that point it was okay. But now within laptops, they keep coming up with a little faster processor, a little additional facilities which you may not need, but they keep making those computers more and more sleek looking. They bring them in different colors. Now all that is essentially sort of to encourage you to get rid of your old computer. I remember once a cartoon strip in which what they've shown was a lady sitting in front of an old computer in which the monitor was like a TV, and then somebody else had a smart laptop. And she said, well, this is what looks sleek. I feel as if I'm sitting in front of a washing machine, not in front of a computer. So, that is the type of feeling that they generate. And while this planned obsolescence helps national economy in one way, it raises the GDP, but then you have to make a choice whether you want to stimulate the nation's GDP or whether you want to increase the electronic waste in the environment. So that choice we always have. And coming to digital stuff, I'll end with this now, more or less. Digital stuff, it helps us a lot. But then it has made us very dependent on only one way of communicating. Imagine somebody staying just a few rooms away from my room in the ashram. I want to tell something to this person urgently. What I do is I pick up my phone and start calling, ordinary call doesn't work. I make a WhatsApp call and so on. Nothing works. Now, the connection is not good. I start complaining about the connection. Why is this person not there? And so on and so forth. What we have completely forgotten is that if it's not something very urgent, all I can to do is to write down what I want to say briefly on a small piece of paper, a little note, and shove it under the person's door. Now, the person is likely to see that before I'm able to contact the person again. So we have forgotten that many things can be done the old-fashioned way. So while we have to keep evolving with technology, we don't have to get obsessed with it and forget that there are other simpler ways which may look old-fashioned, but they also work even today. So these are some of the things that I thought I will share with you. And Richa has already given us a lot of sessions which you could take in the future, and we'll keep having them in quick succession. One of them was on why we are focused on joy, one was on forgiveness, and one was on REBT. And I'm sure there are many up her sleeve, which she has not talked about today. So we hope to have you, Richa, again very soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So we do not have any questions in the chat box also. So let's close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.